Chapter 5 of the Galaxy Primes by E. Doc Smith. The Galaxy Primes, Chapter 5. Supper was over, but the four were still at the table, sipping coffee and smoking. During a pause in the casual conversation, James suddenly straightened up. "I want an official decision, Clee," he said abruptly. "While we're out of touch with United Worlds, you, as captain of the ship and director of the project, are boss, with a capital B. The Lord of Justice, high and low. The works. Check?" "On paper, yes. With my decision subject to appeal and or review when we get back to base. In practice, I didn't expect to have to make any very gravid rulings." "I never thought you'd have to either. But Bell fed me one with a bone in it, so—" "Just a minute. How official do you want it? Full formal, screens down and recorded?" "Not unless we have to. Let's explore it first. As of right now, are we under the code or not?" "Of course we are." "Not necessarily," Bell put in sharply. "Not slavishly, to the letter. We're so far away, and our chance of getting back is so slight, that it should be interpreted in the light of common sense." Garlock stared at Bell, and she stared back, her eyes as clear and innocent as a baby's. "The code is neither long enough nor complicated enough to require interpretation," Garlock stated finally. "It either applies in full and exact or not at all. My ruling is that the code applies, strictly, until I declare the state of ultimate contingency. Are you ready, Bell, to abandon the project, find an uninhabited Tellurian world and begin to populate it?" "Well, not quite, perhaps. Yes or no, please." "No." "We are under the code, then. Go ahead, Jim." "I broke pairing with Bell, and she refused to confirm." "Certainly I refused. He had no reason to break with me." "I had plenty of reason," James snapped. "I'm fed up to here," he drew his right forefinger across his forehead, "with making so-called love to a woman who can never think of anything except cutting another man's throat. She's a heartless conniver." "You both know that reasons are unnecessary and are not discussed in public," Garlock said flatly. "Now, as to confirmation of a break. In simple pairing, there is no marriage, no registration, no declaration of intent or of permanence. Thus, legally or logically, there is no obligation. Morally, however, there is always some obligation. Hence, as a matter of urbanity, in cases where no injury exists except as concerns chastity, the code calls for agreement without rancor. If either party persists in refusal to confirm and cannot show injury, that party's behavior is declared inurbane. Confirmation is declared, and the offending party is ignored." "Just how would you go about ignoring Prime Operator Bell Bellamy?" "You've got a point there, Jim. However, she hasn't persisted very long in her refusal. As a matter of information, Bell, why did you take Jim in the first place?" "I didn't." She shrugged her shoulders. "It was pure chance. You saw me flip the 10th piece." "Am I to ignore the fact that you are one of the best telekineticists living?" "I don't have to control things unless I want to." She stamped her foot. "Can't you conceive of me flipping a coin honestly?" "No. However, since this is not a screens-down inquiry, I'll give you, orally at least, the benefit of the doubt. The next step, I presume, is for Lola to break with me. Lola?" "Well, I hate to say this, Clee. I thought that mutual consent would be better, but—" Lola paused, flushing in embarrassment. "She feels," James said steadily, "as I do, that there should be much more to the sexual relation than merely releasing the biological tensions of two pieces of human machinery. That's hardly civilized." "I confirm, Lola, of course," Garlock said, then went on, partly thinking aloud, partly addressing the group at large. "Ha! Reasons again, and very well put. not off the cuff. Evasions, flat lies, something very unfunny here, as queer as a 9-credit bill. In some, indefensible actions based upon unwarranted conclusions drawn from erroneous assumptions. The pattern is not clear, but I won't order screens down until I have to. If the reason had come from Bell. Me? Bell flared. Why from me? Instead of Jim, ignoring Bell's interruption, Garlock frowned in thought. After a minute or so, his face cleared. Jim, he said sharply, have you been consciously aware of Bell's manipulation? Why, no, of course not. She couldn't. That's really a brainstorm, Clee, Bell sneered. You'd better turn yourself in for an overhaul. Nice scheme, Bell, Garlock said. I underestimated, at least didn't consider carefully enough, your power, and overestimated your ethics and urbanity. What are you talking about, Chief? James asked. You lost me 10 parsecs back. Just this. Bell is behind this whole operation, working under a perfectly beautiful smokescreen. I'm afraid the boss is cracking up, kids, Bell said. Listen to him if you like, but use your own judgment. But nobody could make Jim and me really love each other, Lola agreed. And we really do. It's real love. Admitted, Garlock said. But she could have helped it along, and she's all set to take every possible advantage of the situation thus created. I still don't see it, James objected. Why, she would even confirm our break. She hasn't yet. She would have, at the exactly correct psychological moment, after holding out long enough to put you both under obligation to her. There would have also been certain strings attached. Her plan was, after switching the pairings— I wouldn't pair with you, Bell broke in viciously, if you were the only man left in the macrocosmic universe. Part of the smokescreen, Garlock explained. The repairings would give her 2 lines of attack on me, to be used simultaneously. First, to work on me in bed. See, Bell interrupted, he doesn't think I've got any heart at all. Oh, you may have one, but it's no softer than your head, and that could scratch a diamond. Second, to work on you two, with no holds barred, to form a 3-unit team against me. Her charges that I'm losing my grip made a very smart opening lead. Do you think I'd let her work on me? James demanded. She's a prime. You wouldn't know anything about it. However, nothing will happen, nor am I going to let her confuse the real issue. Bell, you are either inside the code or a free agent outside it. Which? I have made my position clear. To me, yes. To Jim and Lola, decidedly unclear. Unclear, then. You cannot coerce me. If you follow the code, no. If you don't, I can and will. If you make any kind of a pass at Jim James from now on, I'll lock you into your room with a Gunther block. You wouldn't dare, she breathed. Besides, you couldn't, not to another prime. Don't bet on it, he advised. After a full minute of silence, Garlock's attitude changed suddenly to his usual one of casual friendliness. Why not let this one drop right here, Bell? I can marry them with all the official trimmings. Why not let 'em really enjoy their honeymoon? Why not? Bell's manner changed to match Garlock's, and she smiled warmly. I confirm, Jim. You two are really serious, aren't you? Marriage, declarations, registration, and everything. I sincerely and really wish you every happiness possible. We really are serious, James said, putting his arm around Lola's waist. And you won't interfere? Not a bit. I couldn't now, even if I wanted to. Bill grinned wryly. You see, you kids miss the main feature of the show, since you can't know exactly what a prime operator is. Especially, you can't know what Cleander Simsworth Garlock really is. He's an out-and-out tiger on wheels. The three of us could have smacked him bow-legged, but, of course, all chance of that blew up just now. So if you two want to take the big jump, you can do it with my blessing as well as Clee's. I'll clear the table." That small chore taken care of, a quick folding up of everything into the tablecloth and a heave into the chute did it, Bell set up the recorder. "Are you both fully certain that you want the full treatment?" Garlock asked. Both were certain, and Garlock read the brief but solemn marriage lines. As the newlyweds left the room, Bell turned to Garlock with a quizzical smile. "Are you going to ask me to pair with you, Clee?" "I certainly am." He grinned back at her. "I owe you that much revenge, at least. But seriously, I'd like it immensely, and we fit like grace and poise. Look at that mirror. Did you ever see a better matched couple? Will you give me a try, Belle?" "I will not," she said emphatically. "I'll take back what I said a while ago. If you were really the only man left, I would. But as it is, the answer is a definite, resounding, and final no." "Definite and resounding, yes. Final, I won't accept. I'll wait." "You'll wait a long time, Buster. My door will be locked from now on. Good night, Dr. Garlock. I'm going to bed." "So am I." He walked with her along the corridor to their rooms, the doors of which were opposite each other. "In view of the code, locking your door is a meaningless gesture. Mine will remain unlocked. I invite you to come in whenever you like, and assure you formally that no such entry will be regarded as an invasion of privacy." Without a word, she went into her room and closed the door with a firmness just short of violence. Her lock clicked sharply. The next morning, after breakfast, James followed Garlock into his room and shut the door. "Clee, I want to tell you, I don't want to get sloppy, but—" "Want to lep it?" "Hell no." "It's about Brownie, then?" "Uh-huh. I've always liked you immensely. Admired you. Hero, sort of. Yeah, I quote, harder than Pharaoh's heart, colder than frozen helium, and all the rest. But this thing about Brownie—" He reached out. Two hard hands met in a crushing grip. "How could you possibly lay off? Just the strain, if nothing else." "A little strain doesn't hurt a man unless he lets it. I've done without for months at a stretch, with it running around loose on all sides of me." "But she's got everything." "There speaketh the ensorcelled bridegroom. For my taste, she hasn't. She told you, I suppose, when explaining a certain fact, that I told her she wasn't my type?" "Yes, but—" "She still isn't. She's a very fine person, with a very fine personality. She is one of the two most nearly perfect young women of her race. Her face is beautiful. Her body is an artist's dream. Her mind is one of the very best. Besides all that, she's a very good egg and a mighty tasty dish. But put yourself in my place. Here's this paragon we have just described. She has extremely high ideals, and she's a virgin, never really aroused. Also, she's so full of this sickening crap they've been pouring into us, propaganda, rocket oil, prop wash, and psychological gobbledygook, that it's running out of her ears. She's so stuffed with it that she's going to pair with you. Ideals and virginity be damned, even if it kills her, even though she's shaking clear down to her shoes, scared yellow. Also, she is and always will be scared half to death of you. She thinks you're some kind of robot. She's a starry-eyed, soft-headed sissy, a sappadilla, a sucker for a smooth line of balloon juice and flapdoodle. No spine, no bottom. A gutless doll baby. Strictly a pet. You could no more love her ever than you could a half-grown kitten." "That's a hell of a picture," James broke in savagely. "Even with your cold-blooded reputation." "People in love can't be objective, is all. If I saw her through the same set of filters you do, I'd be in love with her too. So let's see if you can use your brain instead of your outraged sensibilities to answer a hypothetical question. If the foregoing were true, what would you do, Junior? I'd pass, I guess. I'd have to, if I wanted to look at myself in the mirror next morning. But that's such an ungodly cockeyed picture, Clee. But if that's actually your picture of Brownie, you're no part of a liar. Just what kind of a woman could you love, if any? Belle. Belle? Belle Bellamy? Hell's flaming furies! That iceberg? That egomaniac? That Jezebel? She's the hardest boiled babe that ever went unhung. Right on all counts. Also, she's crooked and treacherous. She's a ground and lofty liar by instinct and training. I could add a lot more, but she's got brains, ability, and guts. Guts enough to supply the Women's Army Corps. She's got the spine and the bottom and the drive. So just imagine her thawed out and really shoveling on the coal, blasting wide open on all 40 torches. Back to back with you when you're surrounded, she wouldn't cave and she wouldn't give. Or wing and wing, holding the beam come hell or space warps. Roll that one around on your tongue, Jim, and give your taste buds a treat. Well, maybe, if I've got that much imagination. That's a tough blueprint to read. I can't quite visualize the finished article. However, you're as hard as she is, even harder. You've got more of what it takes. Maybe you can make a Christian out of her. If so, you might have something. But I'm damned if I can see exactly what. Whatever it turned out to be, I wouldn't care for any part of it. You can have it all. Exactly, and you can have your Brownie. I'm beginning to see. I didn't think you had anything like that in your chilled steel carcass. And I want to Don't do it, boy. If the time ever comes when you go soft on me as to quit laying it on the line and start sifting out your language. Garlock paused. For one of the very few times in his life he was at a loss for words. He thrust his hands into his pockets and shrugged his shoulders. Hell, I don't want to get maudlin either, so, well, how many men do you think could have gone the route with me on this hellish job without killing me or me killing them? Oh, that's not lay it on the line, Jim. I know what I am. Just one. You. One man in 6,000 million. Okay, how many women could live with me for a year without going crazy? Lots of 'em. But, being masochists, they'd probably drive you nuts. And you can't stand stupidity, which, by definition, lets everybody out. Nope, it's a tough order to fill. Check. She'd have to be strong enough and hard enough not to be afraid of me by any trace. Able and eager to stand up to me and slug it out. To pin my ears back flat against my skull whenever she thinks I'm off the beam. Do it with skill and precision and nicety, with power and control. Yet without doing herself any damage and without changing her basic feeling for me. In short, a female Jim James 9. Huh? Hell's blowtorches! You think I'm like Belle Bellamy? Not by 9,000 megacycles. Like Belle Bellamy could be and should be. Like I hope she will be. I'd have to give two, of course. Maybe we can make Christians out of each other. It's quite a dream, I admit, but it'll be Belle or nobody. But I'm not used to slopping over this way. Let's go. I'm glad you did, big fellow. Once in a lifetime is good for the soul. I'd say you were in love with her right now, except that if you were, you couldn't possibly dissect her like a specimen on the table the way you've just been doing. Are you or aren't you? I'll be damned if I know. You and Brownie believe that the poet's concept of love is valid. In fact, you make a case for its validity. I never have and don't now. But under certain conditions, I simply don't know. Ask me again sometime, say in about a month. That's the surest thing you know. Oh, brother, this is a thing I'm going to watch with my eyes out on stalks. For the next week, Belle locked her door every night. For another few nights she did not lock it. Then one night she left it ajar. The following evening the two again walked together to their doors. "I left my door open last night." "I know you did." "Well?" "And have you screamed to high heaven that I opened it, and put me on a tape for willful inurbanity, for deliberate intersexual invasion of privacy?" "Blast and damn! You know perfectly well, Clee Garlock, I wouldn't pull such a dirty, lousy trick as that." "Maybe I should apologize. Then, but as a matter of fact, I have no idea whatever as to what you wouldn't do." He stared at her, his face hard in thought. "As you probably know, I have had very little to do with women. That little has always been on a logical level. You are such a completely new experience that I can't figure out what makes you tick." "So you're afraid of me," she sneered. "Is that it?" "Close enough." "And I suppose it's you that cartoonist What's-His-Name is using as a model for Timorous Timmy?" "Since you've guessed it, yes." You weasel!" She took 3 quick steps up the corridor, then back. "You say my logic is cockeyed. What system are you using now?" "I'm trying to develop one to match yours." "Oh, I invited that one, I guess, since I know you aren't afraid of God, man, woman, or devil, and you're big enough so you don't have to be proving it all the time." She laughed suddenly, her face softening markedly. "Listen, you big lug, why don't you ever knock me into an outside loop? If I were you and you were me, I'd have busted me loose from my front teeth long ago." "I'm not sure whether I know better or I'm afraid to. Anyway, I'm not rocking any boat so far from shore." "Says you." "You're wonderful, Clee. Simply priceless. Do you know you're the only man I ever met that I couldn't make fall for me like a rock falling down a cliff? And that the falling is altogether too apt to be the other way?" "The first I have suspected. The second is chemically pure rocket oil." "I hope it is." "I wish I could be as certain of it as you are. You see, Clee, I really expected you to come in last night, and there really wasn't any bone in it. Surely you don't think I'm going to invite you into my room, do you?" "I can't see why not. However, since no valid system of logic seems to apply, I accept your decision as a fact. By the same reasoning, however invalid, if I ask you again, you will again refuse. So all that's left, I guess, is for me to drag you into my room by force." He put his left arm around her and applied a tiny pressure against her side, under which she began to move slowly toward his door. "You admit that you're using force?" she asked. Her face was unreadable. Her mental block was at its fullest force. "That I'm being coerced? Definitely?" "Definitely," he agreed. "At least 10 dynes of sheer brute force." "Not enough to affect a tape, but enough, I hope, to affect you. If it isn't, I'll use more." "Oh, 10 dynes is enough. Just so it's force." She raised her face toward his and threw both arms around his neck. His right arm went into action with his left, and Cleander Garlock forgot all about dynes and tapes. After a time she disengaged one arm, reached out, opened his door. He gathered her up, lips still locked to lips, carried her over the threshold. A few jumps later they met their first really old Arpalone. This inspector was so old that his skin, instead of the usual bright, clear cobalt blue, was dull and tending toward gray. The old fellow was strangely garrulous for a guardian. He wanted them to pause a while and gossip. "Yes, I am lonesome," he admitted. "It has been a long time since I exchanged thoughts with anyone. You see, nobody has visited this planet, Groob its name is, since almost all our humanity was killed a few periods ago." "Killed? How?" Garlock asked sharply. "Not Dilippic." "Oh, you have seen them?" "I never have myself. No, nothing nearly that bad. Merely the ozobes. The world itself was scarcely harmed at all. Rehabilitation would be a simple matter, so there's no real reason why some of those engineers—" "The beast!" Lola shot a tight beam thought at her husband. "Who cares anything about the rock and dirt of a planet? It's the people that count, and his are dead, and he's perfectly complacent about it, just lonesome." "Don't let it throw you, pet," James soothed. "He's an Arpalone, you know, not a sociological anthropologist." "Shouldn't come out here and spend a few hours once in a while, but they don't. Too busy with their own business, they say. But while you are physically human, mentally you are not. You are all too, I can't put my thought exactly on it, but more as though you were human fighters, if such a thing could be possible." "We are fighters. Where we come from, most human beings are fighters." "Oh, I never heard of such a thing. Where can you be from?" This took much explanation, since the Arpalone had never heard of intergalactic travel. "You are willing, then, to fight side by side with us Arpalones against the enemies of humanity? You have actually done so at times and won?" "We certainly have." "I am glad. I am expecting a call for help any time now. Will you please give me enough of your mental pattern, Dr. Garlock, so that I can call you in case of need? Thank you." "What makes you think you're going to get an SOS so soon? Where from?" "Because these ozobe invasions come in cycles, years apart, but there are always several planets attacked at very nearly the same time. We were the first this time, so there will be one or two others very shortly." "Do they always kill all the people?" Lola asked. "Oh, no, scarcely half of the time. Depends on how many fighters the planet has, and how much outside help can get there soon enough." "Your call could come from any of the other solar systems in this neighborhood, then?" Garlock asked. "Yes. There are 15 inhabited planets within about 6 light-years of us, and we form a close-knit group." "What are these ozobes?" "Animals. Warm-blooded, but egg-layers, not mammals. Like this." And the inspectors spread in their minds a picture of a creature somewhat like the flying tigers of Hodel, except that the color was black, shading off to iridescent green at the extremities. Also, it was armed with a short and heavy, but very sharp sting. "They say that they come from space, but I don't believe it," the old fellow went on. "What would a warm blood be doing out in space? Besides, they couldn't find anybody to lay their eggs in out there. No, sir, I think they live right here on Groob somewhere. Maybe holed up in caves or something for 10 or 13 years. But that wouldn't make sense either, would it? I just don't know." Garlock finally broke away from the lonesome inspector, and the Pleiades started down. "That's the most utterly horrible thing I ever heard of in my life," Lola burst out. "Like wasps, only worse. People aren't bugs. Why don't all the planets get together and develop something to kill every ozobe in every system of the group?" "That one has got too many bones in it for me to answer," James said. "I'm going to get hold of that engineer as soon as we land," Lola said darkly, "and stick a pin into him." They found the engineering office easily enough, in a snug camp well outside a large city. They grounded the starship and went out on foot, enjoying contact with solid ground. The head engineer was an Arpalone, too. Engineers were not a separate race, but dwellers on a planet of extremely high technology. But he did know anything about space drives. His specialty was rehabilitation. He was top boss of a rehab crew. Then Lola pushed Garlock aside. Yes, the ozobes came from space. He was sure of it. Yes, they laid eggs in human bodies. Yes, they probably stayed alive quite a while, or might, except for the rehab crew. No, he didn't know what would hatch out. He'd never let one live that long. But what the hell else could hatch except ozomes? No, not one. Not one single damn one. If just one ever did, on any world where he bossed the job, he'd lose his job as boss and go to the mines for half a year. Ridiculous, Lola snapped. If ozomes hatched, they couldn't possibly have come from space. If they did come from space, the adult form would have to be something able to get back into space, some way or other. That is simple elementary biology. Don't you see that? He didn't see it. He didn't give a damn either. It was none of his business. He was a rehab man. Lola ran back to the ship in disgust. Something else is even more ridiculous, and is your business, James told the head engineer. Garlock and I are both engineers, top ones. We know definitely that a 100% cleanup on such a job as this, millions, simply can't be done, ever, under any conditions. Are you lying in your teeth, or are you dumb enough to believe it yourself? Neither one, the engineer insisted stubbornly. I've wondered myself at how I could get 'em all, but I always do, every time so far. That's why they give me the big job. I'm good at it. Oh, Lola's right, Jim, Garlock said. It's the adult form that hatches. Something so different they don't even recognize it. Something able to get into space. Enough survivors to produce the next generation. Sure, I'll tell Brownie. She'll be tickled. She'll be more than tickled. She'll want to hunt up somebody around here with 3 brain cells working and give 'em an earful. Then to the engineer, do you know how they rehab a planet that's been leveled flat by the Gullop? You've seen one? I never have, but of course I've studied it. Slow, but not too difficult. After killing, the stuff weathers down in a few years. Wonderful soil it makes. What makes it slow is that you have to wait 50 or 100 years for the mountains to get built up again and for the earthquakes to quit. Excuse me, please. I've got a call. We have to leave, right now. The call was from the inspector. The nearest planet, Claimer, was being invaded by the ozomes and needed all the help they could get. In seconds, the Pleiades was at the port of entry. Where is this Claimer? Garlock asked. The inspector pointed a thought. All 4 followed it. Let's go, Jim. Maybe. Just a minute, Lola snapped. She was breathing hard. Her eyes were almost shooting sparks as she turned to the old Arpalone and drove a thought so forcibly that he winced. Do you so-called guardians of humanity care at all about the humanity you're supposed to be protecting? She demanded viciously, the thought boring in and twisting. Or are you just loafing on the job and doing as little as you possibly can without getting fired? Bell and Garlock looked at each other and grinned. James was surprised and shocked. This woman blowing her top was no Brownie Montandan any of them knew. We do everything we possibly can. The inspector was not only shocked, but injured and abused. If there's any one possible thing we haven't done, even the tiniest— There's plenty, she snapped. Plain dumb stupidity, then, it must be. There must be somebody around here who has been at least exposed to elementary biology. You should have exterminated these ozobe vermin ages ago. All you have to do is find out what its life cycle is, how many stages and what they are, how the adults get into space and where they go. And she went on, in flashing thoughts, to explain in full detail. Are you smart enough to understand that? Oh, yes. Your thought may be the truth at that. And are you interested enough to find out whose business it would be and follow through on it? Yes, of course. If it works, I'll be quite famous for suggesting it. I'll give you part of the credit. Keep the credit. Just see to it that it gets done. She whirled on James. This loss of human life is so appallingly unnecessary. This time we're going to claim her, and nowhere else. Push the button, Jim." "All I can do is set up for it, Pet. Whether we'll get there," she blazed. "It's high time we got a break. Punch it. This time the ship's going to claim her if we have to all get out and push it there. Now punch that button." James pushed the button, glanced into his scanner, and froze, eyes staring. He did not even whistle. Bell, however, did, with ear-shattering volume. Garlock's mouth fell open in the biggest surprise of his life. They were in the same galaxy. All three had studied charts of nebular configuration so long and so intensely that recognition of a full-sphere identity was automatic and instantaneous. Lola, head buried in scanner, had already checked in with the port inspector. "It is Claimer!" she shrieked aloud. "I told you it was time for our luck to change if we pulled hard enough. They are being invaded by Ozobs, and they did call for help, and they didn't think we could possibly get here this fast, and we don't need to be inspected because we're compatible or we couldn't have landed on Groob." For 5 long minutes Garlock held the starship motionless while he studied the entire situation. Then he drove a probe through the mental shield of the general in charge of the whole defense operation. "Battlecruiser Pleiades, Captain Garlock commanding, reporting for duty in response to your SOS received on Groob." The general, furiously busy as he was, dropped all other business. "But you're human. You can't fight." "Watch us. You don't know, apparently, that the Ozo bases are on the far side of your moon. They're bringing their fighters in most of the way in transports." "Why, they can't be. They're coming in from all directions from deep space." "That's what they want you to think. They're built to stand many hours of zero pressure and almost absolute zero cold. Question: if we destroy all their transport, say in 3 hours, can you handle all the fighters who will be in the air or in nearby space at that time?" "Very easily. They've hardly started yet. I appoint you Admiral Pro Tem Garlock, in command of space operations, and will refer to you any other space fighters who may come. I thank you, sir. Good luck." The general returned his attention to his boiling office. His mind was seething with questions as to what these not-human beings were, how or if they knew so much, and so on. But he forced them out of his mind and went, fast and efficient, back to work. James shot the Pleiades up to within 1,000 miles or so of the moon. "How long does it take to learn this bombing business, Jim?" Lola asked. "About 15 seconds. All you have to do is want to. Do you, really?" "I really do. If I don't do something to help these people," it did not occur to her that she had already done a tremendous job, "I'll never forgive myself." James showed her, and much to her surprise, she found it very easy to do. The vessels transporting the invading forces were huge, spherical shells equipped with short-range drives, and with nothing else. No accommodations, no facilities, no food, no water, not even any air. Each transport, when filled to the bursting point with as yet docile cargo, darted away, swinging around to approach Claimer from some previously assigned direction. It did not, however, approach the planet's surface. At about 2,000 miles out, great ports opened and the load was dumped out into space, to fall the rest of the way by gravity. Then the empty shell, with only its one pilot aboard, rushed back for another load. "How heavy shots, Clee?" James asked. He and Lola were getting into their scanners. "Wouldn't take as much as a kiloton equivalent, would it?" "Half a kilo is plenty, but no use being too fussy about precision out here." Garlock and Bell were already bombing. James and Lola began. Slow and awkward at first, Lola soon picked up the technique and was firing blast for blast with the others. No more loaded transport vessels left the moon. No empty one, returning toward the moon, reached there. In much less than the 3 hours Garlock had mentioned, every Azobian transport craft had been destroyed. "And now the real job begins. Garlock said as James dropped the starship down to within a few miles of the moon's surface. That surface was cratered and jagged, exactly like that of the half always facing Claimer. No sign of activity could be seen by eye, nor anything unusual. Even the immense trapdoors, all closed now, matched exactly their surroundings. Underground, however, activity was violently intense, and now confused in the extreme. "Why, there isn't a single adult anywhere!" Lola exclaimed. "I thought the whole place would be full of 'em." "So did I," Bell said. "However, by hindsight, it's plain enough. Their job done, they were killed and eaten. Last meal, perhaps." "I'm afraid so. Whatever they were, they had hands and brains. Just look at those shops and machines." "What do we do, boss?" James asked. "Run a search pattern first?" "We'll have to, I guess, before we can lay the job out." It was run, and Garlock frowned in thought. "Almost half the moon covered, honeycombed. We'll have to fine-tooth it. Around the periphery first, then spiral into the center. This moon isn't very big, but even so, this is going to be a hell of a long job. Any suggestions, anybody? Jim?" "The only way, I guess. You can't do it hit or miss. I'm damn glad we've got plenty of stuff in our outfield and plenty of hydride for the engines. The horses will all know they've been at work before they get the field filled up again. So will you, Junior, believe me. Ready all? Start blasting." Then for 3 hours the Pleiades moved slowly, for her, along a plotted and automatically controlled course. It was very easy to tell where she had been. The sharply cut, evenly spaced, symmetrical pits left by the Galaxian's full conversion blasts were entirely different from the irregularly cratered, ages-old original surface. "Knock off, Brownie," Garlock said then. "Go eat all you can hold and get some sleep. Come back in 3 hours. Jim, cut our speed to 75%. Lola shed her scanner, heaved a tremendous sigh of relief, and disappeared. 3 silent hours later, all three were too intensely busy to think of anything except the work in hand. Lola came back. "Take Bell's swath, Brownie." "Okay, Bell, you can lay off. 3 hours." "I'll stay," Bell declared. "Go yourself, or send Jim." "Don't be any more of a damn fool than you have to. I said beat it." "And I said I wouldn't. I'm just as good—" "Chop it off," Garlock snapped. "It isn't a case of being just as good as, it's a matter of physical reserves. Jim and I have more to draw on for the long shifts than you have, so get the hell out of here, or I'll stop the ship and slap you even sillier than you are now." Bill threw up her head, tossing her shoulder-length green mop in her characteristic gesture of defiance. But after holding Garlock's hard stare for a moment, she relaxed and smiled. "Okay, Clee, and thanks for the kind words." She disappeared, and the work went on. And finally, when all four were so groggy that they could scarcely think, the job was done and checked. Claimer's moon was as devoid of life as any moon had ever been. Lola pitched her scanner at its rack and threw herself face down on a davenport, sobbing uncontrollably. James sat down beside her and soothed her until she quieted down. "You better eat something, sweetheart, and then for a good long sleep." "Eat? Why, I couldn't, Jim. Not possibly." "Let her sleep first, I think, Jim," Bell said, and followed with her eyes as Jim picked his wife up and carried her into the corridor. "We'd better eat something, I suppose," Bell said thoughtfully. "I don't feel like eating either, but I never realized until this minute just how much this has taken out of me, and I'd better start putting it back in. She did a wonderful job, Clee, even if she couldn't take it full shift toward the last." "I'll say she did. I hated like the devil to let her work that way, but you knew I was scared witless every second until we topped off." Exhausted and haggard as she was, Bell laughed. "I know damn blasted well you weren't. But I know what you mean. Fighting something you don't know anything about and can't guess what may happen next is tough. Seconds count." Side by side, they strolled toward the alcove. "I simply didn't think she had it in her," Belle marveled. "She didn't. She hasn't. It'll take her a week to get back into shape." "Right. She was going on pure nerve at the last, nothing else. But she did a job, and she's so sweet and fine. I wonder, Clee, if I've been missing the boat." "You have not." Garlock sent the thought so solidly that Belle jumped. "If you just let yourself be, you'd be worth 1,000,000 of her, just as you stand." "Yes, you lie in your teeth, Cleander, but I love it. Oh, I don't know what I want to eat, if anything." "I'll think up yours, too, along with mine." "Please, something light, and just a little." "Yeah, sit down. Just a light snack. A 2-pound steak, rare, a bowl of mushrooms fried in butter, French fries, French dips, salad, and a quart of coffee. The same for me, except more of each. Here we are." "Why, Clee, I couldn't possibly eat half of that." Then, after a quarter of it was gone, "I am hungry at that, simply ravenous. I could eat a horse and saddle, and chase the rider." "That's what I thought. I knew I could, and figured you accordingly." They ate those tremendous meals slowly, enjoying every bite and sip, in an atmosphere of friendliness and good fellowship, chatting on a wide variety of subjects as they ate. Neither was aware of the fact that this was the first time they had ever been on really friendly terms. And finally every dish and container was empty, almost polished clean. 100% capacity. Can chew but can't swallow," Garlock said then, lighting 2 cigarettes and giving Belle one. "How's that for a masterly job of calibration?" "Me too. It'll pass." Belle sighed in repletion. "Your ability to estimate the exact capacity of containers is exceeded only by your good looks and by the size of your feet. And now to hit the good old sack for an indefinite but very long period of time." "You chirped it, Bertie." Still eminently friendly, the two walked together to their doors. Belle put up a solid block and paused, irresolute, twisting the toe of one slipper into the carpet. "Clee, I wonder if—" Her voice died away. "I know what you mean." He put his arms around her gently, tenderly, and looked deep into her eyes. "I want to tell you something, Belle. You're a woman, not in 7,000,000,000 women, but in that many planets full of women. What it takes, you very definitely and very abundantly have got. And you aren't the only one that's pooped. I don't need company tonight either. I'm going to sleep until I wake up, if it takes all day. Or say, if you wake up first, why not punch me and we'll have breakfast together?" "That's a thought. Do the same for me. Good night, Clee." "Good night, Ace." He kissed her as gently as he had been holding her, opened her door, closed it after her, and stepped across the corridor into his own room. "What a man!" Belle breathed to herself behind the solid screens of her room. "He thought I was too tired, not just scared to death, too. What a man! Belle Bellamy, you ought to be kicked from here to Tellus." Then she threw back her head, drove a hard little fist into a pillow, and spoke aloud through clenched teeth. "No, damn and blast it, I won't give in. I won't love him. I'll take the project away from him if it's the last thing I ever do in this life." She woke up the next morning, not morning either, since it was well after noon, a little before Garlock did, but not much. When she went into his room, he was shaved and fully dressed, except for one shoe, which he was putting on. "Hi, boss. Better we eat, huh? Not only am I starving by inches, but if we don't eat pretty quick, we'll get only 1 meal today instead of 3. Did you eat your candy bar?" "I sure did, Ace." "Oh, I'm still Ace. You can kiss me then." She raised her face toward his. He kissed her, still tenderly, and they strolled to and through the main and into the alcove. James and Lola, the latter looking terribly strained and worn, had already eaten, but joined them in their after-breakfast coffee and cigarettes. "You've checked, of course," Garlock said. "Everything on the beam?" "Dead center, even to Lola and her biologists. Everybody's full of joy and gratitude and stuff, as well as information. And we managed to pry ourselves loose without waking you two trumpet of doom sleepers up. So we're ready to jump again. I wonder where in hell we'll wind up this time." "I'm glad you said that, Jim," Garlock said. "It gives me the nerve to spring a thing on you that I've been mulling around in my mind ever since we landed here." "Nerve? You?" James asked incredulously. "Pass the coffee pot around again, Brownie. If that character there said what I heard him say, this'll make your hair stand straight up on end." "On our jumps, we've had altogether too much power and no control whatever." Garlock paused in thought. "Like a rookie pitcher," Bell suggested. Lola objected. "It couldn't be that wild. He'd have to stand with his back to the plate and pitch the ball over the center field stands and 7 blocks downtown." "Cut the persiflage, you two," Garlock ordered. "Consider 3 things. First, as you all know, I've been trying to figure out a generator that would give us intrinsic control, but I haven't gotten any farther with it than we did back on Tellus. Second, consider all the jumps we've made except this last one. Every time we've taken off, none of us has had his shield really up. You, Jim, were concentrating on the drive, and so were wide open to it. The rest of us were at least thinking about it, and so were more or less open to it. Not one of us has ever ordered it to take us to any definite place. In fact, I don't believe that any one of us has ever even suggested a destination. Each one of us has been thinking, at the instant of energization of the fields, exactly what you just said, and with exactly the same emphasis. Third, consider this last jump all by itself. It's the first time we've ever stayed in the same galaxy. It's the first time we've ever gone where we wanted to. And it's the first time, here's the crux as I see it, that any one of us has been concentrating on any destination at the moment of firing the charge. Brownie was willing the Pleiades to this planet so hard that we all could taste it. The rest of us, if not really pushing to get here, were at least not opposed to the idea. Check?" "Check. That's right. Yes, I was pushing with all my might," came from the 3 listeners, and James went on. "Are you saying the damn thing's alive?" "No, I'm saying I don't believe in miracles. I don't believe in coincidence. That concept is as meaningless as that of paradox. I certainly do not believe that we hit this planet by chance against odds of almost infinity to 1. So I've been looking for a reason. I've found one. It goes against my grain, against everything I've ever believed. But since it's the only possible explanation, it must be true. The only possible director of the Gunther drive must be the mind." "Hell's blowtorches! Now you're insisting that the damn thing's alive." "Far from it. It's Brownie who's alive. It was Brownie who got us here. Nothing else. Repeat, nothing else makes sense." James pondered for a full minute. "I wouldn't buy it except for one thing. If you, the hardest-boiled skeptic that ever went unhung, can feed yourself the whole bowl of such a mess as that, I can at least take a taste of it. Shoot." "Okay. You know that we don't know anything really fundamental about either teleportation or the drive. I'm sure now that the drive is simply mechanical teleportation. If you tried to port yourself without any idea of where you wanted to go, where do you think you'd land?" "You might scatter yourself all over space." "No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't move, because it wouldn't be teleportation at all. Destination is an integral part of the concept." "Exactly so. But only because you've been conditioned to it all your life. This thing hasn't been conditioned to anything." "Like a newborn baby," Lola suggested. "Life again," James said. "I can't see it. Too many bones in it. Pure luck, even at those odds, makes a lot more sense. And to make matters worse, Garlock went on, as though neither of them had spoken, just suppose that a man had 4 minds instead of one, and they weren't working together. Then where would he go? This time James simply whistled. The girls stared, speechless. I think we've proved that my school of mathematics was right. The thing was built to operate purely at random. Fotheringham was wrong. However, I missed the point that if control is possible, the controller must be a mind. Such a possibility never occurred to me or anyone working with me, or to Fotheringham, or to anybody else. I can't say I'm sold, but it's easy to test, and the results can't be any worse. Let's go. How would you test it? Same way you would. Only way. First, each one of us alone. Then pairs and threes. Then all 4 together. 15 tests in all. No, 3 destinations for each setup. Near, medium, and far. Except Tellus, of course. We'd better save that shot until we learn all we can find out. Everybody not in the set should screen up as solidly as they can set their blocks, eyes shut even, and concentrating on something else. Check? James did not express the thought that Tellus must by now be so far away that no possible effort could reach it, but he could not repress the implication. Check. I'll concentrate on a series of transfinite numbers. Bell, you work on the possible number of shades of the color green. Lola, on how many different perfumes you can identify by smell. Jim, hit the button. End of Chapter 5.